Join us as we explore 5 tragic deaths that occurred under bizarre and even absurd circumstances. From pranks gone wrong to fatal bets, these stories reveal just how frail and unpredictable life can be. But how could such seemingly unimportant moments lead to such devastating outcomes? Watch to uncover the heart-wrenching details. It was late May 2021 when a 39-year-old man fell victim to a dinosaur in what was a tragic accident that baffled Barcelona. The dinosaur was in fact a deteriorating Stegosaurus statue, but to this particular man, it was as dangerous as its prehistoric flesh and bone counterpart once was. It began on the morning of May 22nd in Santa Coloma de Gramenet, a suburb just outside Barcelona. A father and son were out walking in the area near the Cubic building, a modernist structure flanked by a series of sculptures. Among them was a papier-mâché Stegosaurus that had stood as a local curiosity for years, a leftover from an advertising campaign for a now shuttered movie theater. While the sculpture had long ceased to draw attention, the father and son noticed something that immediately caught their senses, an overwhelming stench coming from the dinosaur's leg. The pair decided to find the source of the smell. On closer inspection, the pair spotted a small crack in the statue's leg. There was a body wedged within the Stegosaurus, a gruesome discovery that would forever haunt them. Shocked, the father and son quickly contacted local authorities. Mossos d'Esquadra, Barcelona's police force, arrived at the scene. Further investigations revealed that the body belonged to a 39-year-old man who had been reported missing by his family just hours earlier. The cause of death was unclear, but the circumstances hinted at a tragic accident. Now that the body had been found, authorities had to find a way to get it out from inside the Stegosaurus statue. It was no easy task. Firefighters were summoned to the scene to retrieve the body. While the statue was made of papier-mâché, which is a malleable mixture of paper and glue or paper, flour, and water, it also had a rigid internal structure that required specialized tools to access. With the help of a crane, emergency responders sawed open the statue and carefully removed the body from its confines. As investigators began piecing together the details of this unsettling event, a clearer, though no less heartbreaking story began to emerge. The man had likely dropped his mobile phone inside the hollow leg of the statue and, in an attempt to retrieve it, had crawled in headfirst through the crack. Once inside, he became wedged, unable to maneuver himself free or call for help. What should have been a simple retrieval of a misplaced object turned into a deadly situation as the man remained trapped, disoriented, and ultimately left to his fate. For over a day, his family had no contact with him, a gap that only deepened their concern. The lack of communication led them to report him missing, but by the time his body was discovered, it was too late. Authorities later declared no foul play was suspected. It was a tragic accident, a convergence of bad luck and misfortune that culminated in his death. The aftermath of the incident left the local community in shock. Flowers were placed by mourners at the foot of the statue, which had been a silent witness to the man's final moments. The authorities, however, decided to remove the Stegosaurus sculpture from the public space altogether. What had once been a quirky remnant of the area's past had now become a symbol of a devastating loss. The death of the 39-year-old man raised more questions than answers. How exactly had he managed to enter the statue? Could this bizarre tragedy have been prevented with better safety precautions? In January 2023, 46-year-old Magno Sergio Gomez unknowingly consumed one of the most lethal marine species on Earth. What began as a home-cooked meal shared with a friend ended in unspeakable tragedy for the man and his family. The fateful meal occurred when a friend of Magno Sergio Gomez, a Brazilian father of 3, gifted him a pufferfish. Pufferfish, or blowfish, are infamous for their deadly toxin, tetrodotoxin. Found in various parts of the fish, especially in the liver, gonads, and skin, this poison is a defense mechanism designed to deter predators. Tetrodotoxin is staggeringly potent, being over 1,000 times more lethal than cyanide, and there is no known antidote. Ingesting even a tiny amount can lead to severe paralysis and death in humans, making pufferfish one of the most dangerous creatures on the planet. Despite this, pufferfish is considered a delicacy in some parts of the world, particularly Japan, where it is known as fugu. However, its preparation is strictly regulated, requiring chefs to undergo years of specialized training to safely remove the toxic parts. But Magno Sergio Gomez was no chef. He had no years of training under his belt. To top things off, despite the fact that Brazil is home to at least 20 species of pufferfish, knowledge of the risks associated with eating pufferfish is not widespread. As such, Gomes and his friend were unaware of the grave danger they faced. Gomes, having never prepared pufferfish before, attempted to gut the fish himself, unaware of the toxic organs lurking inside. He and his friend removed the liver, where much of the tetrodotoxin is concentrated, boiled the fish, and served it with lemon juice. At first, nothing seemed amiss, but within 45 minutes, Gomes began experiencing strange symptoms. His mouth grew numb and a sense of dread set in as the toxin began to spread through his nervous system. It was clear that something was incredibly wrong. Gomez realized the gravity of the situation and drove himself to the hospital. But the effects of the poison quickly intensified. By the time he arrived, his mouth was completely numb and his condition was worsening. Shortly after entering the hospital, Gomes went into cardiac arrest. Although medical staff managed to revive him after a few agonizing minutes, the poison had already begun its devastating work. The tetrodotoxin Gomes ingested interferes with the transmission of signals from nerves to muscles, leading to progressive paralysis. In severe cases like his, the paralysis extends to the muscles responsible for breathing and heart function, causing respiratory failure and cardiac arrest. Over the next 3 days, Gomes suffered multiple seizures which caused significant brain damage, leaving him with little chance of recovery. Despite being intubated and placed on life support, his condition steadily deteriorated. After 35 days in the hospital, Gomes passed away, his body unable to overcome the catastrophic effects of the toxin. Miraculously, Gomez's friend survived, though not without lasting consequences. The friend, whose name has not been released, experienced neurological damage which affected his ability to walk. Though he is recovering, the impact of the pufferfish poisoning has left him physically debilitated. Had Gomes and his friend been aware of the extreme dangers associated with the fish, the tragedy might have been avoided. In Japan, where pufferfish is consumed under the strict supervision of licensed chefs, such incidents are rare, though they do happen when amateurs attempt to prepare the fish themselves. In the summer of 1871, a tragic and bizarre accident claimed the life of former congressman and prominent lawyer Clement Vallandigham in the small town of Lebanon, Ohio. It was a case that seemed poised to become the pinnacle of his legal career, but instead it turned into a deadly and ironic twist of fate. Clement Vallandigham was a polarizing figure in American politics. Born in 1820, he rose to prominence as a vocal leader of the Copperhead faction, a group of Democrats vehemently opposed to the Union's efforts in the Civil War. Vallandigham's public denunciation of the war earned him both admiration and infamy, leading to his arrest and eventual exile to the Confederacy. Despite these political battles, Vallandigham remained steadfast in his convictions, even running for governor of Ohio from exile. By the time of his death in 1871, he had largely withdrawn from politics and returned to practicing law, where he enjoyed a successful career defending clients in high-stakes trials. The case that would be his last revolved around a deadly altercation on Christmas Eve in 1870. In the town of Hamilton, Ohio, a man named Thomas Myers was killed during a heated brawl at a bar. Myers had been playing cards when a group of men burst into the room, igniting chaos. Amidst the commotion, Myers reached for his gun and a muffled shot rang out. Myers slumped to the ground, fatally wounded. The identity of the shooter was unclear, but suspicion quickly fell upon one Thomas McGeehan, a man with whom Myers had long-standing bad blood. Despite the lack of concrete evidence, the local community was convinced of McGeehan's guilt, and he was promptly charged with causing his death. Vallandigham took up McGeehan's defense, convinced that Myers had not been killed by his client, but had accidentally shot himself in the confusion. Eager to prove this theory, Vallandigham delved deeply into the case, conducting his own experiments on the mechanics of gunfire and residue patterns. His belief was that as Myers rose from his chair, he inadvertently discharged the weapon while attempting to pull it from his pocket. This would explain why the gunshot was muffled, and why there was little indication that McGeehan had fired a weapon that night. On the evening of his death, Vallandigham retired to his hotel room with colleagues to continue preparing for the trial. In his possession were 2 pistols, one used for his tests and another believed to be unloaded, a key prop for his upcoming courtroom demonstration. He began explaining his theory once again, attempting to replicate how Myers might have accidentally shot himself. In the process, Vallandigham unwittingly grabbed the loaded pistol and reenacted the movement, drawing it from his pocket. He turned the muzzle toward himself, thinking the gun was safe, and pulled the trigger. The gun discharged with a deafening bang. Vallandigham had shot himself in the abdomen. In shock, he reportedly said, "I have foolishly shot myself," before collapsing in agony. As word of the accident spread, doctors and concerned friends rushed to his aid, but the situation was dire. Surgeons were unable to locate the bullet, which was believed to have lodged near his bladder, and Vallandigham's condition worsened as infection set in. He survived through the night but succumbed to his wounds the following day. The cause of death was peritonitis, a painful inflammation of the abdominal lining caused by the bullet. In an ironic twist, Vallandigham's fatal demonstration proved the very point he was trying to make. His client, Thomas McGeehan, was acquitted of the charge, as Vallandigham's reenactment supported the defense's theory that Myers had indeed shot himself. However, McGeehan's acquittal did not grant him long-lasting freedom. Just a few years later, McGeehan was killed in another barroom shooting, a tragic end that eerily echoed the case that had once nearly cost him his life. In his final moments, Clement Vallandigham expressed faith in the doctrine of predestination, as if resigning to the notion that this had always been his fate. On a September afternoon in 2013, a community in Fern Creek, Kentucky, was struck by an unimaginable tragedy. What began as an innocent Halloween prank quickly turned into a fatal accident that claimed the life of a 16-year-old local boy. Jordan Moreland was no ordinary teenager. Born in Abilene, Texas, he had grown up in Kentucky, where he was well-liked and admired by those who knew him. He was a sophomore at Fern Creek Traditional High School, where he excelled academically as an honor student. A member of the school's ROTC rifle team, Jordan had long dreamed of serving his country in the United States Marine Corps after graduation. His future was bright, filled with ambition and dedication, yet he also had a light-hearted side. His love for Halloween stood out as a testament to his creative spirit. Jordan was a bright and artistic young man who never shied away from adding a spooky flair to his family's home. His playful nature, however, would tragically contribute to the loss of his life, leaving his family and friends devastated by the abruptness and senselessness of his death. His passion for the holiday was well known among his family and friends. From spooky decorations to elaborate pranks, he embraced the thrill of Halloween in all its forms. That Sunday in September, Jordan had spent much of the day hanging decorations in the yard, preparing for the season that he loved so much. It was during these preparations that a deadly miscalculation would forever change the course of his young life. In a moment of playful spontaneity, Jordan decided to stage a prank for his sister. He fashioned a noose, one of the Halloween decorations, and thought it would be funny to pretend he was hanging from the tree in the front yard. He slipped the noose around his neck and positioned himself in the tree, hoping to give his sister a harmless scare. But in a devastating turn of events, the prank went horribly wrong. Within seconds, the noose tightened around Jordan's neck, cutting off oxygen to his brain. According to reports, it only took between 20 to 30 seconds for Jordan to lose consciousness. His sister was the first to find him hanging lifelessly from the tree. Horrified, she ran to alert their mother, Ginger Rodriguez, who had been inside the house doing the laundry. At first, Ginger didn't believe her daughter, thinking Jordan was simply playing yet another prank, and his sister was helping him. After all, it was typical of him to joke around, especially when it came to Halloween. But when she rushed outside and saw him, it became painfully clear that something had gone terribly wrong. Jordan was unconscious and drooling. In a frantic effort, Ginger tried to cut her son down from the tree, but he was too high, and she could not lift him. Paramedics arrived swiftly, but by the time they managed to remove Jordan from the noose and transport him to the hospital, the damage had already been done. Jordan was placed on life support, but after 12 agonizing hours, his organs began to fail. Despite the efforts of the medical team, his condition deteriorated rapidly, and he was pronounced dead the following day at the University of Louisville Hospital. The coroner ruled Jordan's death as an accident, a tragic consequence of his innocent attempt to scare his sister. In the hours after his death, the shock of the incident weighed heavily on his loved ones. Ginger Rodriguez, heartbroken and overwhelmed by the loss of her son, later spoke out in hopes that his story would serve as a warning to others, urging them to think twice before attempting similar pranks. The tragedy of Jordan Moreland serves as a haunting reminder of the fragility of life and the unexpected dangers that can arise from even the most innocent of actions. What began as a moment of fun turned into a heartbreaking accident that cut short the life of a vibrant and beloved teenager. What began as a simple challenge between friends quickly spiraled into a fatal contest when Subhash Yadav, a 42-year-old man from India, attempted something unbelievable, leaving a family in mourning and raising questions about the dangers of engaging in any type of excess. A father of 4 daughters from a previous marriage, 42-year-old Subhash Yadav had remarried just 9 months earlier and was preparing to welcome a 5th child into his life. Despite his role as a provider and his future aspirations, an impulsive decision to engage in a food challenge would cut his life short. On the day of the incident, Yadav and a friend had gone to a local market with the intention of eating eggs, a common street food in the area. However, a heated argument broke out between the two, and in a moment of bravado, they decided to settle the dispute with a challenge. Whoever could eat 50 eggs would win a prize of 2,000 rupees, about 21 pounds. For Yadav, the stakes may have seemed minor at the time, a friendly wager to resolve a disagreement, but the task itself was anything but trivial. After successfully and rather impressively consuming 41 eggs, Yadav attempted to take a bite out of the 42nd one but suddenly collapsed. Bystanders rushed him to a nearby hospital, but as his condition worsened, he was transferred to the Sanjay Gandhi Postgraduate Institute of Medical Sciences. Unfortunately, despite the doctor's efforts, he never regained consciousness and passed away shortly after. Medical experts attributed his death to complications due to overeating. The exact cause of his death remains unknown, but there are several, if uncommon, ways someone can die from overeating in one sitting. While eggs themselves are a rich source of protein and generally considered healthy, the problem lies in the sheer volume of food consumed in a short amount of time. Overeating, especially in extreme quantities, can in extreme cases lead to gastric rupture, where the stomach lining tears under pressure. Another possibility that wouldn't necessarily be a rupture is a Mallory-Weiss tear, a condition where you can get esophageal tearing at the gastroesophageal junction. In Yadav's case, doctors suggested that the excessive consumption of eggs may have triggered acute complications, leading to his sudden collapse and eventual death. Tragic incidents like this also shed light on the psychological aspect of eating challenges. In a moment of heightened emotion or competitiveness, individuals may push their bodies beyond safe limits without realizing the potentially fatal risks. What might seem like a daring or amusing challenge can rapidly escalate into a life-threatening situation, as was the case with Subhash Yadav. Yadav's family chose not to comment publicly on the accident, likely overwhelmed by grief and disbelief at the sudden loss of their loved one. His death left behind a wife, daughters, and a child on the way, all of whom now face the difficult task of coping with the absence of a father and husband.